Hi guys, I'm going to talk to you guys about viability, and I've been seeing a lot of posts on Reddit recently about champions being viable and a lot of things about Korean meta and all that. Well, I just wanted to say that viability doesn't mean you can't play the champion. And what I mean by this is that I always see a lot of people playing, Fizz, Ahri, Kassadin, and a lot of times when there's forums about people who are maybe like Sion, Warwick, some of them that aren't as good as everyone else, a lot of times the main thing I hear them go to is he's not viable. The biggest problem I have with this is that when people say he's not viable, they're not talking about solo queue. And that's the biggest thing that bugs me, is because you can go any mid and hit challenger, but for some reason you can't. Everyone says Lucian isn't viable. Now, when a pro player says someone isn't viable, what they mean is that it's not viable for a competitive game. And the reason for that is based on the meta, um, based on champion uh, ability, I guess, not necessarily how high a skill cap is, but how good each player is individually with him. Now, the problem I have is that let's say Sneaky is very good with Lucian, but uh, Saint says he's not viable. It just depends on, like I said, the meta. If the meta is for a very slippery, high damage AD carry that needs a team to back him, well then he'll be very viable. But if it isn't, if it's only assassins, then it's very hard for someone like Lucian to be viable in the meta. But whenever somebody says they're viable, let's say Saint says he's not, suddenly everyone takes it like it's the word of the day. That's the end all be all, and people refuse to play him in solo queue because he's not as powerful. And that's a terrible idea. If you're really good with the champion and they say he's not viable, don't stop playing that champion, because he will be viable at some point. A lot of times it's just a matter of waiting for the meta to change and waiting for people to innovate. Another big thing that I have with it is that when people say it's not viable, a lot of times because they don't nobody else chooses them because they're not quote unquote viable, suddenly the meta is very stagnant because there are not very many people who are good at a champion who can say, okay, well, what counters the assassin mid? Maybe Swain, very, very tanky Swain, who can heal up all of Ahri's burst. Maybe that's actually the counter to the assassin mid meta, because Ahri goes bottom and he pushes very hard and he takes mid towers. And the problem I have is that everyone looks at, okay, this is what the pros are picking, but how do I counter that? They never look at how do I counter it. They never look at, maybe I can play Swain, maybe I can play uh, a, a very hard carry in the jungle because that counters the very tanky meta. Uh, Maybe I can play a very sustained bot lane and just control the whole entire game. Ashe, Zyra. And I feel like it stagnates the NA scene mostly. I can't say anything about EU or any of the Korean meta or Korean servers, but I know for a fact that NA is very stagnant in their innovation. We don't necessarily innovate anything, so uh, I think this is part of the problem, is that no one actually plays champions at a high level. Nobody's actually mastered certain champions and is able to play them, or if they are, suddenly they're considered troll picks, and they're just not able to build a team around it. And um, I think that maybe if we start looking at other champions that we haven't played in a while, Urgot, maybe maybe even Sion, Heimerdinger, Zekarath, we can all look at them and see what they're good at and see what they're bad at, and see that maybe if we played it in a different type of team comp, it may beat the meta currently. Um, that's all I got for right now. I'm kind of tired, sorry guys.